Hi guys, welcome back to Spelling and Word Study. My name is Mrs. Rhoades and I'm here to get you started on Unit 27, the AW pattern with O. Please take a second to gather your materials. You will need your teal book open to page 167. You'll also need some colorful pens, markers, or crayons. Remember, whatever I mark on my board, you should be marking on your paper. Please save room for a key as well. All right, so for the last several weeks, we have been learning about some advanced vowel sounds, sounds that are not considered long or short. We talked about diphthongs like oi and ow. Well, this week we're moving on to another common sound, which is aw. Now, aw can be tricky because there are so many different ways to make that aw sound. This week, we are only focusing on words that use the letter O to make the aw sound. So, what I'd like to do first is read the list with you. Please repeat after me, and as you do, use your ears to listen for that aw sound and use your eyes to find that O in the middle of each word. Here we go. Broth, cloth, cost, cross, floss, frost, froth, gloss, lost, soft. Did you hear that aw sound in each word? Great. What I'd like to do now is choose a color, and we're first going to look for words that use the OTH chunk. So we see that right here in the word broth. We see it again in the word cloth. We see it one more time in the word froth. Okay, so broth, cloth, and froth all rhyme, and they all use that OTH chunk. Now, the only other word I can think of that uses that same chunk is moth. Now, we have to be careful because if you put an ER after it, it changes the sound altogether. It's pronounced mother. We also see this chunk in this word, but that word is pronounced both. So we've got some tricky things we're focusing on this week. Broth, cloth, froth, and moth all rhyme. And they all use an OTH chunk to make the aw sound. All right, let's choose a second color. And this time we're going to draw a box around the OST in cost. And again, we see it in frost. And again, in lost. Cost, lost, frost, those words all rhyme. Now, we have to be careful with this pattern too, because a few weeks ago, we learned about words like most and host and post. So that OST pattern can make different sounds. This week, instead of focusing on the long O sound, we are focusing on the aw sound in cost, frost, lost. So over here, blue box equals OST, and that's going to make an AW-ST sound. That's going to have 3 sounds in it. All right, let's choose another color, and this time we're looking for the OSS. Now, this is a very common pattern. We see it in cross and floss and gloss. And you probably recognize it from smaller words like boss, toss, and loss. Okay? In all of these cases, we have OSS making an ah sound. Okay, we have one pattern left, and that is the OFT in soft. We don't have any words that rhyme with it on this list, but another word you might know is loft. That also rhymes with soft. So brown chunk equals OFT, and that will make an oft sound. All right, so those are the patterns we're working on this week. Really, the only tricky part, I think, is the O. Everything else you should be able to sound out this week. Just remember, though, that this pattern might have a different pronunciation in different words. So let me erase those other words so we don't get confused. And what I want to do next is I want to go through the list and make sure we know what all of these words mean. Okay, so let's start with our first word. Broth is a noun. A broth is a thin soup. So if somebody's really sick and they don't have much of an appetite, you might try to feed them some chicken broth. Or you might even buy some chicken broth at the store and then use that as an ingredient in some of your cooking. If you're making a thicker soup, or you're making a chicken pot pie, or you're cooking rice, you can use broth with any of those. Broth is like a salty, meat flavored, watery soup. Okay, so that's a noun. Cloth is also a noun. You can kind of see the word clothes hanging in there because your clothes are made out of cloth. Cloth is just another word for fabric. You sew it together to make a shirt, pants, whatever. A cost can be a noun if we're talking about the cost of something. It can also be used as a verb. If you're asking someone, how much does that cost, right? It means how much money do I have to spend to get it? Okay, so when we think about a cost of something, we're thinking about its price. Cross can be a noun if we're talking about a cross, but it can also be a verb if we're talking about crossing the street, or crossing your fingers, or crossing something off your to-do list. Okay, so that can be a noun or a verb. Floss, that's that string that we use to clean between our teeth, right? Our dentist tells us to floss at least once a day. That can be a noun if we're talking about the string, but it can also be a verb if we're talking about the action. I floss my teeth. Frost is a noun when we're talking about that stuff that looks like snow. It shows up on the ground on a cold night. So maybe it didn't actually snow, but the water vapor in the air kind of turned into crystals on the ground. So that could be frost. Sometimes we see frost on our window pane. If you go out to the car early in the morning, you might have to defrost your window pane or your windshield so you can see out it. So that thin coating of snow or ice is known as frost. But we can also use this word as a verb if we're talking about frosting a cake. I have to frost my birthday cake. Froth is a noun, but it can also be used as a verb. Are you noticing a pattern here? Many of our words this week can be used as nouns and verbs. When I think of froth, I think of tiny bubbles. All right, so if you make some hot chocolate, sometimes there's little tiny bubbles. So you put some whipped cream in there, there's some little bubbles, some froth on the top. Some fancy coffee drinks have froth on the top. We also hear this word when we talk about like maybe an animal that has rabies and the animal is frothing at the mouth. They have all these little spit bubbles. That's a sign that that animal is very sick. So froth, tiny bubbles. Gloss is a noun. If we're talking about lip gloss, I put some gloss on my lips. If we're talking about the amount of shine in a paint, when you're painting walls, you have to decide if you want the paint to have gloss or to have a matte finish. You can also use it as a verb, though. You can gloss over something, or you can gloss something. You can gloss your lips with gloss. Lost is a verb. When we think of it as the past tense, now I lose my phone. Yesterday I lost my phone. So it's the past tense of lose. But we can also use it as an adjective, as a describing word, right? I can't find my lost phone, or I saw a sign hanging. People were looking for their lost cat or their lost dog. Soft is also an adjective that describes how something feels. My shirt feels soft. I put lotion on my skin to keep it soft, right? So soft here would be the opposite of hard or rough. Okay, so on our list this week, we have nouns, we have verbs, and we have adjectives. Okay, so lost and soft are adjectives, but we can turn some other words into adjectives by adding a suffix. Now you're going to get more practice with this on page 171. You're going to get a bunch of nouns: boss, frost, point, oil, grouch, cloud. Notice we're reviewing some of our diphthongs from previous weeks. You're going to take these nouns and turn them into adjectives by adding a Y. So let me show you what that looks like. You can buy some paint at the store that has high gloss. It is a glossy paint. You can walk in the woods and find a rock that is covered with moss, and you can sit on that mossy rock. You might have a brother or sister who thinks they are the boss. They treat you in a very bossy manner, or they act very bossy. Okay, so notice I started with my noun, boss, gloss, and moss, and I changed each of these to an adjective, a describing word, by adding Y. I can do that with words like point and pointy, oil and oily, and so on. All right, that's all I have for you today. Good luck, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.